All right, so let's grab that file. So we're going to make sure the file exists before we try and grab it, because if for some reason it gets deleted or moved or doesn't exist and we don't check it, it's going to throw an error and blow up. So we're going to say, I'm going to spell it right if I can type. We're going to say if the file exists, and now you see I got file. While I was off camera, I added system.io namespace. You'll probably have to add that. Using .system.io input output. That's all of our input output stuff. I'm going to say if file exists and it needs a path to the file. So I'm going to say if file exists and we've got our base path, right? So let's do our base path using string interpolation. And we got to do double ticks because a backslash is escaped, a single one. Remember how we did the lines, the slash n? So it doesn't read. It's looking for a different character. After the slash, we do a double slash, so it actually looks at what we're looking at. It's now looking in the folder, so remember what our file was called? .json. Right, good job. And I need another one of those. So if this exists, then let's go in, let's open it and read it. So we're gonna create a directory so we can read this thing. So we're gonna instantiate directory information. It's in the IO namespace, so if you've got using system.io, you've got it. And the single argument is the path to the directory, not to the file, so let's just use the base path. We now have a directory, initial JSON file, equals directory.getFiles, and we already have the base path, so now we just have to find the file's name. Look at this right here. These are your overloads. Remember how I told you we could overload methods and do different things with them based upon the types and the amount of arguments? You can see here there's 4 overloads for get files, and you can click through them and see what they are. There's one that says get files, which returns all the files from the directory. There's one that asks for a search pattern, the search string to match against the file names. That's the one I think we want. Initial.json. We know it exists, and now we have it. Now that we have it, we can open it up, read it, and convert it. That's what we're about to do. So I'm going to say using. The keyword using is used when you're opening some sort of stream, either through the file system or some other way, and you want to make sure no matter what that it gets closed up and it gets sealed so it doesn't eat up your resources. If you ever use Windows a few years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, after so long, you notice that Windows was totally sucking and you'd have to restart it. Control-Alt-Delete over and over again because memory resources were being sapped because things weren't being collected correctly and you're running out of memory. So this helps stop that. So we're going to create a StreamReader. It implements a text reader that reads characters from a byte stream in a particular encoding. So we're going to call this StreamReader file, FI for file. We're going to open the file open text. It opens an existing UTF encoded text file, which is what we have. And we have initial JSON file full name. So what are we doing wrong? Oh, I know what we're doing wrong. Okay, if you look back up here, this is giving us a list. So you see these little square brackets. It's not just giving me file info. It's giving me a list. It even tells me I'm going to return a list of the current stuff that matches the search pattern. So even though there's only one, it's going to return one file. It's still going to be wrapped in a list of things. So let's comment this out and I will show you what I mean. It might be easier. F5. Let's say start adventure. And I'm going to F10. Now you will see that I don't have a file necessarily. I have a list. See how that drops down to this? There's my file. It's holding a list of files that match this. There's only one. There better only be one or we got a problem. And we could check that, but we're not going to worry about it right now. So I can't just call this and then look for the name because this is actually a list and not an adventure. It's not a single file. What I need to do, I don't know if you saw that too. The first number in a list in C# is always a 0. We don't start at 1, we start at 0 because we're nerds and we're programmers, and I don't know why. There's actually a good computer science reason why, but I don't care. So right here, I got to call the actual number of the list item that I want, which is only going to be 1. So I'm going to call 0. That now I'm actually calling out to the right file. I'm looking for the full name, which is the full path of the directory, and I've opened up the file to read. This thing is going to read this whole file, and I need to make, what I want to do is convert this right here, our JSON stuff, into this, our adventure. We can do that by deserializing. This will be serialized. We want to deserialize this from JSON into the actual adventure. We can tell it, we can tell our computer, we can tell our code that, hey, this file is actually an adventure, and please turn it from JSON into the file, and please turn it from JSON into that class. How do we do that? Let me show you. I'm gonna say initial adventure equals. We're gonna use a class called JSON convert. Now this is not built in, I don't believe. Right? There's no using statements. This is actually a nice, neat little JSON package that's built outside of Microsoft. One of the great things about Visual Studio and one of the great things about C# is they have a way that you can get a hold of all these awesome bits of code that somebody else wrote. They're called NuGet packages. If you've ever played with Node or NPM, Node Package Manager, it's kind of like that. So what we can do a couple things. I don't know if you caught that when I moved over this. The bottom option, and that's the NuGet symbol right there, is to install package Newtonsoft.Json. Newtonsoft puts out JSON convert. We need to install the NuGet package. So I could do that right there and install it, but I want to show you a different way. The better way is to right-click on the project that you want to install it in. Right-click, and you'll see there's options down here to manage NuGet packages. So let's click that. It says no packages found because it's looking at the installed side. So let's go to Browse. And it's going to go out to the NuGet.org and look at all the different things that you could actually download. There's probably hundreds of thousands of these things. So and they're all really nice. But right now we want JSON. So I'm going to look at JSON. And the top one is, of course, Newtonsoft.Json. So I'm going to click on it and I'm going to say install in my project. And it puts a bunch of stuff in here that we can then use the JSON library. Now my code's not correct, so that's why it's saying it's broken. But it actually installed it. You can see right here it installed it. It's got a green circle. We have JSON now in here. You can see if you go to dependencies, it now has packages under here, and there's JSON. We have a file. We have a file that tells us what to use here, and that was in the folder I talked about a minute ago. Open containing folder. Not the bin folder, but the OBJ folder has information about all the stuff that we need. Right here is our project assets.json. If I were to open this, I'll just do it in Notepad to prove to you that it is a notepad, that JSON, remember it's .json, and it is a text file. You can see we have .NET Core. It's telling what version it is that we're using. And then here's Newtonsoft.Json, and here's the libraries it needs, and blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. So there's that. Now, I'll get a light bulb that will say, are you wanting to use Newtonsoft.Json? Yes, I do. Now that I have that, I can say deserialize. I can say deserialize an object because we're now reading this in. It's been serialized. And it's going to want, if you hover over deserialize object, it's wanting to know what kind of object it is. I need to tell it what kind of object because it is a generic method, or it takes generic arguments, and that's something we can talk about maybe later. It's a pretty advanced subject for right now. Just know that I'll do the angle braces and say this is going to be an adventure. And then I need to send in this serialized information. So I've got this. This has got me opening the file, And now I need to send in all the information. So I'm going to say fi.read to end. So it's going to read from the top to the bottom. Oh, I'm missing a parentheses up there. Look, Visual Studio is telling me that I can even do something more simple. Let's see. How would you simplify this? Use the simple using statement. Whoa. Okay, so that's a new convention. That's a new syntax I'm not aware of. Very cool. That shortens it. I'm not going to do that because I don't. I'm used to this for right now. I'll go to that eventually. Thank you, Visual Studio, but just you can shut up. So now that we're done here, initial adventure, when it's finished, is an actual copy of adventure, and it will have the information that we got from the JSON file. Console write line. And let's just list out our information. So we'll say initial adventure. We have initial adventure now, and we can say dot title. We can write another line and give us our description. All right, let's see this happen. Start. I don't know why I did that so big. Here's our initial adventure. We should have read in our file, and we should have converted our JSON file to an actual adventure class that we created. So if I hover over title, well, there it is. If I hover over description, well, there it is. Beautiful. Let's F5, go to our thing, and you can see we just read in a file and we listed out some of its attributes. Let's give our initial adventure a couple more properties before we go for the evening. We're going to give it, let's say, a completion XP reward. If you actually finish this adventure, you're going to get this much experience points. And I don't know, it's the initial adventure. What do you guys think? 250. I have no idea. That sounds cool. How about we give it a gold reward too? If you finish this, the Duke will reward you with 100 gold because he's a cheapskate. There's also a thing I'm thinking about. It's called a globally unique identifier. And I would like to put one in each adventure so that we can keep track in the character sheet which adventures the characters have done. Sounds like a good idea to me, but it may not be at this point, but let's just try it. So we can get ourselves a globally unique identifier right inside of Visual Studio by going to Tools and create GUID. There's a lot of different ways you can create a GUID with different formats or whatever. We simply want to get a GUID. Let's just say new GUID. I want number 5, I think. Yeah. There we go. It just gave me a GUID. It's a big old long number. I'm going to say copy. Now I'm going to get rid of some of the stuff it's going to give me. It might have been a better way to do that, but I don't care. I want this number. This number should be unique and should never be able to be accidentally recreated. All right. So this adventure has a GUID, title, description, completion reward, completion gold reward. Let's give it minimum levels and maximum levels. We don't want someone being able to play this if they're level 10. So we're going to say max level is 1. This is the initial adventure. You should only be able to play this if you're level 1. And you have to be at least level 1. Minimum level 1. All right, so now we need to add all these properties onto adventure. I'm going to do that real fast. Hey, let me show you something real quick. I like this. So if I pull this file down, I'm going to hold down the left mouse button, pull it down, and you see these little things down here. These are cool. I can actually stick this, do a split screen by using these right here. I'm going to put it right here, and now I can keep this open so I can remember the properties I want, and then come over here and start doing the properties. So we're going to make the GUID a string for now. Let me show you another shortcut. Super important shortcut. I'm going to say prop. I'll make them properties, right? I'm going to say prop. These are called code snippets. These are things that are already built in that will throw out some code for you that is used over and over again in a certain way if you know how to use it. So I'm going to say prop, and I'm going to say tab tab. Boom, it made a property for me. And look, the two things I need to change are highlighted. So what do I need now? Completion XP reward. That is an int, actually. Let's keep that as a number. And we're going to call it, oops. I tab over, completion XP reward. Already done for me. Beautiful. Go to the end, hit enter, prop, tab tab, integer, tab, completion gold reward. Go to my end, prop, tab tab. Let's run this real quick to make sure that all these values get brought into our new adventure. I'm going to hover over initial adventure, and I'm going to pull down. Go up here. You can see that all the things we have just got brought in. 1, 1, there's our GUID, there's our starting reward, our completion rewards. And so, yeah, we got a fully functioning class. So last subject of the night, guys, we're going to go over the first of 5 ultra important principles with computer programming. These are called the SOLID principles, S-O-L-I-D. It's an acronym. The first one is single responsibility principle. Single responsibility principle basically states that every class or module should have one and only one reason to be changed. There's one certain in life, and that's change. When we have classes that do multiple types of things, then what happens is you begin to create what's called, in programming terms, coupling. It's very tightly coupled with other things. You go to change something, and you got to change stuff in a million other places. Just trust me here. It's a major league headache if you're tightly coupled. So you want to keep all your classes doing one thing. So is our main program class doing one thing? Absolutely not. It's doing character things, it's doing game things, load game things, it's making menus. Now maybe that's the thing it should be doing, is making menus. The program maybe should be making menus and passing the ball around and letting other things handle the other things that don't belong with that kind of stuff. Last thing for the night, we're going to go back to our adventures folder. We're going to create a class called Adventure Service. This will be the thing that handles all things that deal with adventures. Actually, you know what? Even in that, start new game shouldn't go in adventure services. Starting a new game isn't an adventure-y thing. We should have an engine for all the game stuff. So let's create a folder called game. This will hold all of our game things. Start, load, whatever. We still might need an adventure service. Actually, I know we will. And let's create a class called Game Engine. All right, now we have a game engine.cs. We want to say public, so we can make it public. And in here right now, all I can think of, let's make a public method called start new game. What do we call it over here in program? Start game. So we'll call it over here, start game. Let's just take all this, get rid of this, and bring it right over to our game engine. Ugh. Too many lines. Try and keep things tight. Now we don't want it public anymore. We don't even need it static anymore because we're going to make an instance of our game engine back in the program back in the program class. So we're going to say public, get rid of static, void start game. Now in starting game, we might want to do a whole bunch of different things. load adventures, load characters, do a bunch of different things. This is loading the initial adventure, which we probably don't necessarily want to do every time because we might want to do other adventures. But for now, we just know that we want to load the initial adventure. But we don't want to do this in here. This is all kinds of adventure-y things, correct? We don't want to do this. You know what? I'm going to rename this. I don't like game engine. This isn't actually the engine stuff that runs the game. This is going to be a service. We're going to start a game for right now. We'll call it GameService. Oof. It's saying, hey, can I rename stuff for you? And I'm going to say, yeah, sure. But I'm going to rename it again because I spelled it wrong. So right click, say rename. Don't just rename it like that because you won't get this actual service to rename everything for you. Actually, it still didn't. Whatever. It only got one. All right, game service. And now I need to do all this stuff in here. I got to bring in all my using statements. So I'm going to say, yes, I want my adventures. Yes, I want my system IO. System IO, sorry. And yes, I want JSON, Newtonsoft.Json. So yes. Okay, I think we've got some problems. I don't want that. System like that. I want system IO. There we go. And you'll see I've got two in here that I don't need yet. So I'm going to right click and say remove and sort just to keep things clean. And now this is working. It looks like it's completely working the way it was, but now program's broken because it doesn't know what this is. So let's create an instance of our game service back in program. This will be private because we don't need anyone to, this is top level. We don't need anyone to mess with this. Private static game service, and we're going to lowercase game service. Doesn't know where it's at because we haven't brought that namespace in. We're going to call it, there it is, using. You notice these are all not working now because we don't need them here. So I'm going to remove those. Why do I spell it like that? Game service equals new game service. Oh my gosh, I did it again. Now this, I just need to use my instance of game service and say start game, and everything should work exactly the same as it did just a minute ago. Let's make sure. Let's put a breakpoint right here so we can watch it. I'm going to say start game. Boom, I'm in here. I'm on F11, and now I'm in my game service. All this stuff should work just the same. My initial adventure should have all of the stuff filled in. There's the GUID, all the things, and boom. Whew. So guys, another giant lesson where you just learned a ton of things. You learned JSON, you learned file systems, you learned about the S in solid, the single responsibility principle. You guys are way farther now than you were when you first began. It's awesome. And so we can really, I promise, next time, get started on the actual game part, start putting stuff in. The JSONs, we'll create the character JSON, we'll get the characters going, and we'll make a bunch of more objects. And it's going to be a blast. Thanks a lot for hanging this long, and we'll see you next time. Peace.